Hi there, this is Kelly from Green Acres Nursery and Supply, and today we're talking all about raised beds. Why should you plant in a raised bed? Well, raised beds are the ideal place for planting because you have control over all elements for your plants. You have control of the soil, the sun, the fertilizing, the water, everything is within your reach. So raised beds are a great choice for Sacramento, especially because a lot of areas of our region have very poor soil. In raised beds, you can plant anything from tomatoes, vegetables, herbs, all the way to cactus. Really, the world is your oyster when it comes to a raised bed. All right, so what are the steps to raised bed gardening? First, let's talk about material. What should you have a raised bed made out of? Well, right here, this is redwood, and it's probably about 4 or 5 years old. It could use a stain, I'll be honest, but it's still in great shape. It's not rotting, and so redwood or cedar would probably be your best choice for a raised bed if you're making your own. In terms of options of what we carry at Green Acres, we have a raised cedar bed, and so that would be a great choice. You could even put wheels on the bottom to be able to move it around your yard. All right, so you get outside, you have your raised bed. What's step one to get ready for planting? All right, well, I had sugar snap peas here last season. I had flowers over here, beets and lettuce, and it's all harvested, as you can tell. So now what I need to do is to clean up the soil. As you see, I've been digging in the dirt, getting old roots, getting leaves, getting debris, and I'm getting rid of it. So that's step one. You want clean, healthy soil so you can plant fresh plants. Okay, so let's say I've cleaned out all the roots and all the debris is out. I have this plant over here that I really don't want to get rid of because I really still like it. It's an alyssum, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to root it up and I'm going to transplant it somewhere else. So if you're not quite ready to say goodbye to all of your plants, that's one thing you can do to preserve a few for another few months or another season. If you're dealing with last season's vegetables though, you will want to pull those up before you plant your warm season vegetables. So the first step of a raised bed is getting the soil all cleaned up, getting roots and dead plants, dead debris out of there so you can plant fresh new plants. And a really important part is having healthy soil. So you want to choose like a compost or soil booster mix, and you want to mix it into your existing soil according to the label instructions. I'm going to show you how I do that with a product I love called the Soil Booster from EV Stone. So let's do that. This is EV Stone Soil Booster. I'm going to use about a half bag or so and mix it into the existing soil. Okay, so we mixed in all of the soil booster, and as you can tell, my soil is now nice and fluffy and aerated, and that's just how you want it before you're going to plant. So I picked a couple groupings of plants that actually really like each other and play well together. So I'm going to show you what they are. We have tomatoes, and they do really well with cucumbers, chives, oregano. Those ones just, they like each other. We'll put in notes some to avoid so that you don't make some of those mistakes, but those are always good choices. And let's talk flowers. Marigolds are a great choice for the garden. They actually deter certain pests, so you definitely want to include flowers in your garden. Other flowers could include like zinnias, alyssum. They both add good bugs and attract good bugs to your garden, and pollinators. And the more pollinators you have in your garden, the bigger the harvest. As for peppers, those can go most anywhere. I'd say that the pole beans and marigolds are also great partners. So those are just a few ideas of what goes well together. Really anything at our nursery that you find in the greenhouse, those are great choices to plant in spring. The way I'm choosing what to put where is I actually am considering a lot to do with how high they'll get, and so I'm looking at each label, and generally it says like the maturity, it'll say, so this is a tomato, it says it matures in this amount of time, 55 to 70 days, the soil that it needs, and the spacing requirements in general. So you want to follow those as much as you can. For example, a cucumber was saying it needed 4 to 5 feet, and I don't quite have that in this garden space, so I'm going to save that for a different location. So you're going to look at the label, follow it according to what it suggests, and that actually is a really important step, because if plants are really cramped, they don't have airflow, and when you don't have airflow between them, that's the opportune time for pests and diseases to take hold, and that's definitely not what you want in your garden. So please do follow the label instructions. And as you can see, I've made holes all around here, so the next step would be to add some organic starter fertilizer for planting. And so I'm going to do that in each hole, plant the plants, and then water it in, and then I'll have my garden set. We'll go into a few more like special tips for special things you're planting. As far as tomatoes, this is a huge, they call it Sacra tomato, right? This is a huge thing we like to use in our gardens. We like to plant in Sacramento because we have an ideal climate. But there's a lot of things that can go wrong with tomatoes if the kind of like the environment isn't correct. So something to know about tomatoes is they are susceptible to blossom end rot, and that means that the end gets brown and soft, and that's a calcium deficiency. So you could add some eggshells to the bottom of your hole. There's also some other products which we can show, and that can help reduce the effects of blossom end rot and having problems with your fruit. Another thing to know about tomatoes is you want to plant them really deep. I don't know if you can see here, it's not the tallest tomato, but I'm going to plant it almost 3/4 of the way up, and all of these other shoots that are coming off, those are actually going to start to become roots once it's planted. So don't be afraid to plant these guys deep. A few other things to mention, for cucumbers, for green beans, some things that grow up, you're gonna need some kind of trellis or some kind of support for them. So just keep that in mind when you're planning your garden out. Make sure that it would fit in the location, make sure that you would have something that it can be supported on. Again, and that's so that the fruit can stay fresh and beautiful and not get rotted out in wet soil. All right, so let's talk irrigation and watering in your raised bed. If your raised bed is far away from a water source like a faucet or a water bib, there's still a lot of options. If you want to go this route, it would be using a 5/8 inch or 1/2 inch tube, and then you would use your emitters, like this has emitters all throughout it, or you could do individual emitters with your 1/4 inch tubing directly around the plant. So that's an option. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could go. You could essentially have this tube around and then hook this 1/4 inch tube to water each individual plant. I've opted for what I think is a simpler version. This is just a soaker hose. It's hooked up, it runs, it soaks everything in here, one and done. And for any questions in terms of how to get water from the source to here, our irrigation gurus are super knowledgeable. If you simply bring photos of your setup and a little bit of information, they can help you get on the right track. All right, so you got everything planted up. I'm gonna go over a few tips and tricks before our last step. So as you're getting your irrigation system in, don't forget to use these guys. These are stakes that are going to help keep your hose in place so it doesn't move around and the water stays where it needs to go. Something else that's really important about raised beds, if you're worried about soil seeping through the cracks between The pieces of wood, you could always use screen from like a window and put that on along the side to prevent the soil from seeping out. Something else to note is underneath this 3 feet of soil is, guess what? Soil. We have native soil underneath. You don't want a hard surface underneath your raised bed, because when your tomato is 6 feet tall, its roots are going to be 6 feet tall. It needs a place to go. So you don't want to encapsulate your entire bed. You want there to be free soil at the bottom. And as the years go on and you are amending your soil, the soil at the bottom of the raised bed will continue to improve and actually get better. You don't even need to keep it so separate. It will improve with time as you amend. So the last and final step of our raised bed gardening is what we call mulching, top dressing. Really, those are the words people use. So we're using, this is one of our favorites. This is called Gorilla Bark. It's shredded redwood. And so I'm going to put it on top 2 to 3 inches in depth. And the reason for that is it is going to stop weeds from growing. It's going to prevent evaporation, and it's going to keep the roots nice and cool when the summer heat comes. And it just looks really pretty too. So this is definitely your last step. You want everything planted. You want the irrigation all in place before you put in your mulch or your bark. So we'll show you at the end, and that's going to do it for us with raised bed gardening.